look at it now and they say it's social change, it's social justice. It's not. It's not.
It's not. That's right. It's not. And this is not going to improve things. Implementing these policies will make things worse. They've made things worse every single place they've ever been implemented. And often they've made things so much worse that you actually can't imagine it. And people don't do the reading. I've done the reading. I've done the reading. I know how bad things can get. They can get so bad that no matter how bad you think they are, you're not even in the bloody ballpark.
Well, it's just so strange that these sort of courses and these sort of ideologies are thriving in universities. And it's really disconcerting to someone who has children. And you know that your children are going to go there and they're going to be exposed to these ideas.
You know, I think that
wow,
I think
a
that
guy
the
who used to teach at Harvard just says send him to trade school.
I think the universities. I think the universities. I think you can make a reasonable case that the universities do more harm than good now. I hate to say that.
Well, this is a strange time where access to information is so incredibly easy. You could educate yourself
right
seemingly endlessly online. And with books, and just there's so much information available. This is not the 1930s. It's not a time where it was difficult to get an education outside of a
well,
university.
the universities may have, or the university, which is like the repository of human wisdom and the attempt to expand that, may have already moved outside the universities. You know, just because an institution calls itself a university doesn't mean it is. And many disciplines have turned into ideological factories. And so where's the university? I mean, the university is where anyone wants to learn about their culture and where anyone wants to expand the domain of human competence. And a lot of that's happening online now. So maybe that's the future. The only thing the universities have now, I think, that people can't get elsewhere is accreditation. But they're doing everything they can as fast as possible to make their accreditation valueless anyways. So yeah, it's a terrible thing to say that the universities may do more harm than good, and I haven't come to that conclusion lightly.
Well, there's
and I
also,
hate to say it.
I'm sure you do. There's also a gigantic financial stake. The amount of money that you're
and this is especially the case in the U.S. I mean, one of the things that's happened over the last 30 years is that the proportion of university expenditures that's gone to the administration has massively increased. And at the same time, the student loan burden has increased. And so what's happened in a weird sense is that the administrators have conspired to steal the future earnings of their students. And then you can't declare bankruptcy. So to me, it's indentured servitude.
Well, you can't declare bankruptcy on student loans.
Right,
That's
you
a
can't
very important distinction.
That's right. You cannot declare bankruptcy on student loans. So you think about that. You tell me what difference there is between that and indentured servitude.
There's not much, because it's the only thing that I can even think of where that's the case.
Corporations can go bankrupt.
Right.
They do it all the time.
Individuals can. Businesses can fail. You can be deemed incompetent or not capable of paying your debt in every other case, but not with universities.
Yeah, right.
That is crazy.
It is crazy.
It's crazy because they were just trying to combat the issue where so many kids were defaulting on their student loans. They try to make you perpetually responsible for it, or the idea is that these kids have to learn responsibility. Is that the way to do it? By overcharging them for some useless education?
Well, I would also say that it's not particularly useful to burden your citizenry with a massive debt as soon as they graduate at a time when they're most likely to take entrepreneurial risks.
Yes.
You're not going to take entrepreneurial risks if you're so burdened with debt you can't get yourself off the ground.
Yeah, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt with people that if you're lucky, you're going to make, what, $40,000, $50,000 a year straight out of college? If you're lucky. So you're dealing with the amount of money that you would have to make if you didn't pay any taxes or didn't have any expenses. You'd have to work for 4 or 5 years, longer than you would actually be in college to get that degree in the first place. It's insane. It's insane.
I would say, too, to the university students who are listening, like a lot of your professors are Marxists. Ask them if they're Marxists. Read the Gulag Archipelago first, because you need to get your arguments together. And Solzhenitsyn won a Nobel Prize for that book and for his other writing, and it was one of the key. There was a couple of things that brought down the Soviet Union, but one of them was Alexander Solzhenitsyn's book, and he demolished the intellectual credibility of Marxism forever. But you have to read the damn book. and you got to get your arguments in order. And you go after your Marxist professors, ask
And
them.
it's a difficult book to read.
It's a very difficult book to read. It's a very difficult book, although it's difficult because it's so horrifying. It's not difficult particularly because it's impenetrable. In fact, it's an absolutely fascinating book in the same way that a terrible horror story is fascinating. But there's no excuse for this. There's no excuse for these professors who claim to be benevolent Marxists.
Well, I think the way you framed it is very important. I think the way you framed it is them being compassionate intellectuals that are inclined toward this, because on the surface, it seems like it's what a compassionate intellectual would support.
Yeah, yeah. And it's the unthinking adherence to compassion as the highest moral virtue.
And it's also, whenever you have an ideology, whenever you have these rigid, established forms of communication or methods of thinking, you box people in. You box people in and you control them, and you get them to stick inside that ideology, and in doing so, you suppress people. It's so ironic that the people that are against suppressing are actually suppressing people through enforcing these ideologies and suppressing the marketplace of free ideas. You're not allowed to have free ideas. You're not allowed to debate these things. I mean, there was that really famous instance at the University of Toronto where this one guy, I don't even remember what
Warren
his book.
Farrell.
Yes, what was
Why
his
Men
book
Make
about?
More.
Yeah, Why Men Make More.
Yeah, it was a multivariate analysis of the income disparity between men and women. He used to be a feminist activist. He decided to go look into the claim that women were making. I think at the time it was 70 cents for every dollar that men were making. He thought, well, I have daughters. I better go check this out and see, do a little bit of in-depth investigating. And what he found out was that there were many reasons for the disparity, and perhaps one of them was unfair discrimination, but there were another dozen, and they seemed to account for more of the disparity than the discrimination. I mean, just the fact that men take the more dangerous jobs is a huge contributor to that, and it's not trivial. You should get paid more if you're putting your limbs on the line. I mean, I grew up in northern Alberta where a lot of young men dropped out of school and went and worked on the oil rigs. It's like, you go try that. Well, maybe you could do it. But, the guys would lose their fingers, they'd lose their toes, it was 40 bloody below up there, and they'd be wrestling pipe in the middle of the bush.
I have a friend who does it. I have a friend who does that in northern Alberta.
Right.
It's horrific.
It is. It's tough work, man. And you're out in the bush for 2 weeks.
Yeah, when you go outside, there's temperatures where you literally can't be outside of your truck for more than 30 minutes.
Right.
You have to jump back in the truck, and you're
that was
almost
called
dying.
life where I grew up. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, those are very difficult jobs, and they're very high paying because people die.
Yeah, they're hard work.
And there's not a lot of women taking those jobs.
No, and a good thing, too.
So this guy, I'm sorry, what is his name again?
Warren Farrell.
Warren Farrell, who wrote this book, was giving a speech about this book, and the response was so unbelievably violent and crazy and aggressive and also ignorant to what he was saying, ignorant and not wanting to debate the facts, but wanting to call him a misogynist, wanting to call this hate speech. And
yeah, that's a favorite, man. And I got accused of that twice in the last 2 months because I don't want to use these compelled pronouns. It's like
the one woman in the debate that you had with the other man that I believe is transsexual.
Yeah.
The one woman who was trying to say, what is the difference between not using those words and using racial slurs and hate speech to describe these people? Like the idea that that's a woman who's a professor who's expressing it in that way. What is the difference between not choosing to use made-up pronouns versus calling someone generally accepted racial slurs?
Yeah.
That they're trying to frame that as the same thing.
Well, and
it's so intellectually dishonest.
Well, the racial slurs are also legal. So what's happening is the law is already such that not using one of these made-up pronouns is a crime, whereas using a racial epithet isn't.
Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy. So you could use the N-word.
No, it's legal too. Yes.
But you have to say zir.
Yeah.
You have to say Z. Whew. Wow. This is crazy. This is really crazy. This is a bizarre moment in time where
It is bizarre.
the preposterous nature of it is so undeniable that it's forcing a lot of people. And I applaud you for doing what you're doing and risking your status with the university, risking your support of your peers, and sticking your neck out the way you've been doing with your YouTube videos. Because if you hadn't done that, there's a lot of people who wouldn't be aware of how insidious and what you were describing earlier, the creep,
Yeah.
the slow creep
Yeah.
towards pushing forward, waiting for you to object, waiting, and then moving forward a little bit more once you relax.
Yeah.
Because that's what this is.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's been bizarre, I can tell you that. I mean, my son and I counted the number of press articles that have been devoted to this. These are serious press articles. This doesn't count YouTube or radio or TV or any of those things. And I mean, the YouTube coverage has been, I would say, overwhelming. There's been 170 major press articles written about those videos in the last 2 months.
And what's the general consensus? Are they going?
Well, to begin with, in the first 2 weeks, which was the most stressful part of this for me, I would say the bulk of the press articles ran contrary to my views, and their basic theme was something like, "Why doesn't the mean professor just play nice?" It was something like that. But luckily, fortunately, I seemed to maneuver past that, and then people started to actually read the policies that I was speaking about and started to think about them.